Hey girl, welcome back to another episode of Rock That Fitness with Anna Rockstar. And today we have a very special guest back on the show, Brett Scranton. So excited to have him back. And today we're going to be talking about the fourth of the four horsemen of chronic diseases that we've been on this four-part episodes on. We're going to be talking about metabolic dysfunction and diabetes, both types. So let's dive in.
Hey, Anna.
Brett, so good to have you back. Thanks
I
for
know.
doing this again. You've been on a vacation,
I
right?
have. I know. A little bit world travels.
World traveler.
Yes.
Man, you're living the life. I like
Trying.
one of these days, boy, I'm going to catch up with you.
Funny.
Um, we're going to talk about we've done 3 episodes already. And today we're going to do our fourth and final episode on the four horsemen of chronic diseases. But first, I just want to introduce you to my listeners, to our listeners here on RTF. And y'all, this is Brett Scranton. If it's your first time listening in, he's my good buddy. We hang out on Instagram, chit-chatting back and forth all the time about the sciencey things, the health, fitness, and all the things preventative that we can do. And also for longevity and health span, we want to optimize our health, our fitness, our bodies. We're not just here just to get by. We are finding ways to optimize our health and fitness. So we nerd out on all these things, and we like to really kind of bring it down to a level where, like, just all of us on a day to day, just your normal everyday person. And we're just going to talk about this stuff in a way that we can understand it and how it really does apply to our lives and how we can actually make a difference in our health and our fitness in so many different ways. And so this is one of the things that I believe strongly about as a nurse, that we do need to understand. Anyway, Brett Scranton, he's a personal trainer, trained through NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine, world traveler, buddy. Welcome back, Brett.
Hey, thank you. I feel welcome. Thank you so much.
It's fun.
Absolutely.
And the way that we met, in case everybody wants to know, I'm not exactly sure. You probably know better than I do, but we met, I think, is because we have a mutual friend, and that's Alan Aragon. So
That's
dropping
true.
the name
That's
dropping there.
true.
And
Very true.
yes, Alan, I can't wait to get him back on the show.
He's amazing.
Yeah. All right, Brett, we're going to be talking about this. So I think why do we want to talk about metabolic dysfunction and diabetes? Um, I just want to say that I think that for awareness purposes, I think many people don't understand um, that it could be creeping up on us as we're aging, especially after the age of 40 in particular. And I just want to bring awareness to it, so that there's things that we can do and be aware of in our lifestyles that could help us, perhaps definitely prevent metabolic dysfunction and diabetes, and just how prevalent it really is. That's why it's one of the four horsemen of chronic diseases. Um,
Absolutely. And so we're studying Dr. Atia's book that we love. It's called Outlive.
yep.
And so he addresses these four kind of leading chronic conditions that we have some lever of control over. So this is a fourth in our 4-part series: type 2 diabetes and metabolic dysfunction.
Yeah. So let's go ahead. So the why is probably going to be kind of throughout our discussion. And this isn't formal. We have some questions I'm going to go over. And so we're just going to do this kind of interview style, since I know that, you've been putting in some extra research on this. So let's just do it interview style. So first of all, let's talk about metabolic dysfunction. Like, what does that mean? It sounds so broad.
Yes, absolutely. So they define it by looking at 5 conditions that you might have, and if you meet any 3 of these 5 conditions, then you're classified as having metabolic syndrome. And type 2 diabetes is the primary kind of risk that you'll be exposed to if you have metabolic syndrome. So just to list them out, the 5 conditions that you need to be aware of, that 3 of which will classify you as metabolic syndrome: high blood pressure, so that means greater than 130/85, High triglycerides, so this is the fat molecules in our blood. And here, high is defined as over 150 milligram per deciliter. The third one is low HDL. And if you remember, HDL is the name for our good cholesterol, in quotes. And we want that good cholesterol to be higher the better, up to a practical limit. So low HDL would be defined for men as being below 40 milligram per deciliter. And for women, it's a little bit different. It's below 50 milligram per deciliter. And we're going to find out that HDL is kind of a big player in helping us mitigate inflammation. So that's why we want it to be a little bit more higher and protective.
Yeah. And these numbers the only way to get these is through your blood work. That's how you're going to know.
Absolutely. The fourth one that's a risk factor is waist circumference. So if you measure greater than 40 inches around the waist for men or 35 inches around the waist for women, that's a risk factor. And then elevated fasting glucose, which is really the name of the game for type 2 diabetes. So here, if it's greater than 110 milligram per deciliter, if you've got any of those three, then you're going to be kind of more at risk. And some statistics include that 90% of us have at least one of these five things. So it's quite common. 90% is a very high number. And then 120 million Americans have three or more. So very, very prevalent in our society. But I'd like to step back and maybe just say, okay, let's talk about type 2 diabetes overall. It's the 8th leading cause of death in the US. So we've talked about the other three, heart disease, cancer, and dementia or Alzheimer's. So this one's below those. It only accounts for about 100,000 deaths per year, which is a lot, but it's lower than those other three that we started our podcast series with. And so PubMed kind of tells us that there are some risk factors which are less under our control. So certainly things like age, gender, family history, genetics. But by and large, the risk can be largely mitigated through lifestyle changes. So that's why it's kind of important to talk about, because we have a lot of control over it.
Yeah. And so what I want to make clear to everybody is that metabolic dysfunction is the umbrella where a lot of conditions are under. So diabetes is under this umbrella called metabolic dysfunction. And if we haven't mentioned it before, and in case you're not aware or familiar with it, there are two types of diabetes, but the one that we're primarily going to be focusing on when we talk about it is going to be diabetes type 2. Type 1, I don't know if you were going to go into this or not, but I just wanted to make sure we covered it. Type 1 is the type that you're born with, where your body is not producing insulin. That's the type 1. Type 2 diabetes, which is the adult onset type of diabetes, is the one that you can over time acquire. You can start having it pre-diabetes and then diabetes type 2. So I just wanted to bring that up. So that's a difference between, because that was one of my questions. What's the difference between metabolic dysfunction and diabetes? And basically, it's under that umbrella.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate what you said, so type 2 diabetes is a condition that happens when your blood sugar is too high. So it develops when your body isn't responding to the effects of our hormone called insulin. And type 1 diabetes specifically is an autoimmune disease in which your immune system attacks and destroys the insulin producing cells. And type 1 diabetes only is about 10%, people have that particular condition.
Yeah. When I was a school nurse, we had several kids in the school that would have to come, and do their injections or just be checked on all the time, So I remember that. But I do want to interject a personal story that when it comes to diabetes, I have to take care of my ex-husband's mother for like 10 years. We had moved her here to Texas and I took care of her for 10 years. She had type 2 diabetes, and it was an experience that, I was a young mom at the time. I didn't even know really what it was, but I saw her slowly decline, and it did lead to her death. And it was incredibly sad to see the decline and how it impacts how diabetes type 2 diabetes affects every part of your body. And so, I just want to make that clear, because I don't think that people realize that you say type 2 diabetes, or you just say diabetes, and they just think it's one one problem. But the problem with the problem is that it is an extreme problem and it affects the entire body and every cell, every tissue of your body. Diabetes can kill your whole body in all kinds of ways. Um, and I
Yeah, that's
saw
a
that
great
with
point.
her. So that's why we need to understand it's not like, oh, if I get diabetes, I'll just treat it. No, because it's going to impact every part of your body. It's very important to not, to prevent it. So
It's very significant. And Dr. Attia tells the story in his book of his own discovery that he was insulin resistant. And we're going to talk about and define that term. That just means kind of pre-diabetic. But he
hmm
found out he was pre-diabetic when he was heavier back in 2009, so only about 15 years ago. And it's the exact moment that he became interested in his longevity and writing about it and teaching other people. So in particular, of the 4 horsemen of chronic disease, he wants us to know that these are accumulating diseases. These don't just happen. So these are processes that accumulate over a long period of time.
right.
They're by and large under our control, not completely, but a lot. And, really wanted us to know too that traditional medicine does not address the prevention aspect like we need to know. They more so handle after we have a full-on crisis with our health. So really he's stressing the importance of self-advocacy and knowing your numbers and monitoring your metrics and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you said something interesting that I'd like to highlight there. And I just want to ask you, just to be really clear, are you saying that being insulin resistant and being pre-diabetic are one and the same?
Yeah, and it comes down to measuring that blood glucose, so that circulating sugar in your blood. Below certain ranges is deemed to be healthy or optimal. When it crouches into the next tier, that's kind of considered becoming insulin resistant. And sometimes that's also phrased as pre-diabetic. And then over a certain threshold, then you're entering full-on type 2 diabetes.
Okay, so it's kind of the same. You say your insulin is becoming insulin resistant. It's kind of the same thing as saying you're pre-diabetic.
I think so. And really the conversation I started learning more about for preparing for today has to do with understanding how our metabolism works. So I kind of like to go there a little bit if we can.
Yeah. And at some point, I want to talk about, just not that I did any research on this, but I know that it's kind of been a trendy thing over the past year where people are getting these glucose monitors. And so I want to touch on that. It wasn't part of our what we were going to talk about, but I do want to touch on that at some point. So let's talk
That'd be
about,
amazing.
yeah, what were you going to say? Let's go.
Okay. So I'd like to first define the term. So what is metabolism? Because we hear that all the time,
Yeah.
metabolic health, metabolism. So metabolism is the chemical reactions performed to break down or to convert our food into energy. So really that's it. So just changing food into energy, okay? Simple as
Yep.
that. And it's needed for everything in our body. So everything from breathing, blood circulation, digestion, growing and repairing our tissues and our cells, regulating our body temperature, managing our hormones, and of course our physical activity requires the energy from metabolism. And so to me, then I really want to know next, okay, so changing food into energy. So let's talk about the big picture about food. And I know your people, your women know all about this from your teachings, but there's 3 major or macronutrients for giving energy to our body, right? Protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And even though it's kind of obvious and your people know this, it's pretty important to talk about when we get into diabetes. So protein, just to say it one sentence, it's our amino acids. It's needed for growing and repairing our cells. And we know how important it is. We talk about it all the time. Fat, that's the essential fatty acids needed for cushioning our organs, and it's used for absorbing certain vitamins and nutrients. So you got to have some fat, and that's why that's there. Carbohydrates is really the centerpiece of the diabetes discussion.
Yeah.
So carbohydrates can be simplified into basically calling them sugar. So it's the simple sugars that are broken down into glucose in the blood.
Yeah.
And so our bodies digest the food we eat by mixing it with stomach acid. And when the stomach digests the food, it breaks down carbohydrates into glucose. So that's really what happens. Then the stomach and the small intestines absorb the glucose and release it into the bloodstream. So I was wondering, how do we get sugar in our blood? Well, that's kind of how the stomach, the small intestines break down the food we eat and release it into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
Okay. So then our body uses our bodies are amazing. Our body
Yeah.
uses this hormone. There's many hormones. This hormone, insulin, is really important. So it is used to understand and to transport our glucose out of the blood for two reasons. One, for immediate use for our cellular energy. So when we need to run a marathon or, we lift our weights, but also then if we're not using it for immediate cellular energy, it's stored for later use. Okay. So regarding
Stored.
this,
Stored
yeah,
where?
that's where we're going. So regarding the
Okay.
storage, that's a great question. The glucose circulating in our blood is monitored by our pancreas and by use of the insulin hormone. And the body is smart enough to try and keep our glucose levels constant. So for extra glucose that's not needed immediately, insulin helps turn that extra food into glycogen. So that's another word, but glycogen is stored then in our liver and in our muscles. So that's the place of storage, in the liver and muscles. So let's say you haven't eaten for a few hours. Your blood glucose will drop, and then your pancreas produces the opposite kind of hormone, and it's known as glucagon, which will break down your stored glycogen and put it back into glucose. So it knows how to store your stuff and to return it to you when you need it.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets a little bit more involved. So where is glucose stored? We talked about that. So it's muscles, and that's for immediate consumption if we're being active, and fat cells if we're being sedentary. So, but fat cells aren't bad. We need fat. We need to store fat. We need to have fat for all those reasons we talked about, cushioning our organs, absorbing vitamins. So there's this word called subcutaneous fat. So that's just the fat just beneath our skin. Think of that as a metabolic buffer zone. So that's a safe place where to store our glucose if it's not needed. Okay. So then when you need it, it's released out of there into your muscles. So that's how the body works. But once your subcutaneous fat stores have reached their capacity, then that extra glucose has to go somewhere. And that's where it's going to go to some dangerous and unwanted places. It'll go to your bloodstream as triglycerides, and that's type 2 diabetes. It'll go around your heart and other organs as in the format of visceral fat, which is dangerous fat. And so if it's used for immediate energy and then stored in the muscle and liver, but when it reaches its storage limit, then it's stored safely in our subcutaneous fat cells until that limit is reached, and then it stays in the blood and creates dangerous visceral fat. So that's kind of what leads up to type 2 diabetes. So what happens when your body stores excess glucose in your circulating blood? Since your other storage sources are full, your cells become resistant to that insulin hormone. So meaning the insulin can no longer effectively transport that glucose to your cells for needed energy. So this leads to prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. And this introduces that term that we talked about called insulin resistance. And we can measure that with blood tests, which we're going to get into in a second. But the opposite of insulin resistance is the situation we want to enjoy, and that is called insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
So that's where our cells are being responsive to the hormone for regulating that glucose disposal and storage. So we want to build more insulin sensitivity, and we want to avoid insulin resistance.
Yeah. Right.
Is the idea there.
I was trying to think of an easy, like a simple way to describe it because it sounds so complicated. But
Right.
insulin is like the key that opens up the cells to allow the glucose to go in to be the energy.
Exactly.
So what happens is I think that over time, when we have these high levels of sugar in our blood, it wears it out. It's like it's wearing out that keyhole, and that insulin's not able to open it up and let it in. So
Yeah.
trying to make it, like, trying to put this in layman's term, kind of a simple way to think about it is, when we're overloading our body with sugars over and over and over, we're wearing out um, this
Mechanism.
machine, this
Yeah.
mechanism that is intended for good, but we're wearing it out. And so that's when we get into this condition of being pre-diabetic and then diabetic, when our body is not able to manage the sugars anymore. And so it becomes
Absolutely.
detrimental to our health.
And then if you like, we can talk about the risk factors and if we know about type 2 diabetes being genetic and some stuff like that.
Yeah. But because I'm sorry, I'm going to back up for a second. What I'm just saying is that I'm just trying to put this picture in everybody's mind because if you are pre-diabetic, that is a danger zone. I think what happens is, doctors are doing these blood works and they're saying, "Oh, you're just pre-diabetic." But Peter Attia talks about this. This is not optimal, and getting close to that or being pre-diabetic, people think, "Oh, well, I'm just pre-diabetic." No, I mean, I understand you're not diabetic, but it's still a very important thing to be concerned about. Like, you are causing damage to your body, and this excess sugar in your bloodstream is causing damage to tissues and cells, and this is like throughout your body, throughout. It can cause problems with your vision. It can cause problems with your skin, with, being able to, you get a cut and your body able to heal quickly. There's so many things. But just
Absolutely.
understanding that having excess sugars, just making it simple here, in our body like that is dangerous to every tissue, every cell of our body. So I'm just trying to think like just layman's term, simple, why is this important to know? Because I know that like Peter Attia in his book where he talks about, this is like you said, it's accumulative. This is an accumulative disease. It didn't just happen this past week when you got your blood work and find out you're pre-diabetic. Your body's been fighting because it's in this condition. And yes, we can do some things to reverse it, hopefully before it's too late, but you've still got the damage. It's still causing damage. All right, go
Yeah.
ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
absolutely. Now, how do we know these things? And that's like you alluded to earlier by testing our blood. And there's a couple of main tests. The one that most people get is called the basic metabolic panel or BMP. And it includes a wide array of stuff, but one of them is the blood glucose levels. The one I like a little bit more that I think is a little bit more, I don't know, long term is called HbA1c, which stands for hemoglobin sugar. That's the HB. The average blood sugar, this measures the average blood sugar over about a 3-month period. So it's a little bit better of a long-term predictor versus blood glucose, which is kind of a picture on your daily level.
Is that what we hear all the time when people say A1C?
Yeah, same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then it's real simple. There's 3 ranges, and I'll talk about optimal too. So if you're above 6.5% of your blood being hemoglobin sugar, that's diabetes. So that's when you're in the danger zone. The pre-diabetes or insulin resistance territory is going to be anywhere between 5.7% up to that edge, so up to 6.4%. That's pre-diabetes. And then sort of healthier range will be anything below 5.7. Now, you don't want it too low either, because remember, glucose or sugar is our primary energy source for our bodies, for all the
Right.
metabolism functions, for our activity, everything. So really, you want to see it between 5.0% and 5.5. That's considered really optimal. Dr. Attia says 5.1% is optimal. That's his own opinion. So kind of in that low 5% territory is where you want to see it exist. And in terms of like who's at risk for diabetes, we can talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
So the Mayo Clinic says that your lifetime risk of developing type 2 diabetes is 40% if you have one biological parent who has it. And it's 70% if both your biological parents have it. So that's
Hmm.
pretty significant.
Yeah. Why they're always asking that question, right? When you go to the doctor, who does
Absolutely.
anybody in your family have diabetes?
Family history. And
Yep.
so other risk factors besides family history is like you alluded to, which is age. So as you get over age 45, your risk increases. Certainly overweight or obesity has some influence, a lot of influence over this. Sedentary lifestyle, so being physically active less than 3 times a week will increase your risk. Race is a definite category of risk, and so that includes Black, Hispanic, Native American, Asian American, and Pacific Islander. And in particular, African American women are even 60% higher than African American men for this particular risk. So there's a gender influence there too.
Yeah.
Having the high blood pressure, having the high cholesterol, these are going to increase your risk. let's see, if you have had gestational diabetes, which is diabetes during pregnancy,
Mm-hmm.
and if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, those are also known risks to influence your metabolic stress there.
Mm-hmm.
If you eat a high fat diet, if you're a heavy drinker, if you're a smoker, those obviously are going to influence the risk a little bit more. And then if you have stress in your life that you haven't managed, that's going to also contribute to this condition a little bit too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a myriad of things we can do to reduce and prevent the risk, but I'll save those till after we want to go there.
Yeah. What else did we want to talk about? I think we pretty much have kind of gotten the gist of the thing of what is it, and we are talking about our body managing sugars.
Yeah.
And if you do get to the point where you are diabetic, what I think we can go there. I think we can talk about having that diagnosis and what we could do to manage it and hopefully reverse some of that, because I know that a lot of people, say a lot, what I have seen, especially when I as a nurse, patients that they keep going back to the doctor to do their blood work and to get tested and to be checked on. They go back into their life and they don't tend to make the changes necessary to help improve their condition. And it seems to me, from what I could tell, it's just a lack of education. It's a lack of knowledge, really, because they just don't know. They're like, I'm diabetic, and they don't understand. And sometimes that person, they may be given medicine, glucose, whatever it is that they get placed on to manage the sugars in their blood, and they think that that's just going to be what they need to do. Like, just take more and eat more sugar. Like, it's just cover it up. And
Yeah.
that's not helpful. So let's talk about what advice we would give someone who feels overwhelmed by their diagnosis of diabetes.
Well, the primary tool in the toolkit for managing your weight and your metabolism is food. And I always like to think of the two sides of the coin. So foods that you should go to and use, just as important as foods you should avoid. So let's talk about two sides of that coin. On the foods that you should go to, primary on the list is omega-3 fatty acids. So this includes things like our fish, but also nuts and seeds, beans, stuff like that.
An avocado. That's my
Yes,
favorite.
absolutely. 100%. Vitamin C. So this you'll find in veggies, fruits, especially berries. So you don't need to have to supplementation, but just from those foods. And a big one is polyphenols. Polyphenols. And this is defined as colorful plant-based foods. So all the different colors in the rainbow on your various vegetables. And also included in polyphenols is coffee, tea, and even dark chocolate. And then also big on the food list, we've talked about this lots in our past episodes, is the prebiotic fiber, the fiber that we feed our gut that our microbiome digests for us, because it creates these valuable nutrients called short chain fatty acids. And we've talked about that before.
Yep.
Things that you need to avoid in the realm of food would be processed meats, deep fried foods, so kind of common sense stuff. All the stuff that's refined carbohydrates, so factory refined food production, commercial baked goods, and then just think anything with added sugars. So your candy, your sugary drinks, and of course, alcohol is biggie that needs to be placed on that avoid list.
Yeah.
In addition to food, also to improve our metabolism is exercise. So we're striving for that Center for Disease Control guideline. So 150 minutes of zone 2 cardio, 2 to 4 strength training sessions per week. So here what we're doing is we're increasing the production of certain hormones that keep our inflammation in check.
Mm-hmm.
So especially moderate exercise is really good for that.
Yeah.
So, and then stating the obvious, maintaining a healthy weight, getting enough sleep, managing your stress are very important.
It's crazy that everything just goes straight back to all those.
It does.
It's like
yeah,
that
it's like
is
broken record.
Yeah, like we're always saying the same thing, but that's what it takes. There's no
Yeah.
magic pill for this. There's no, you have
Yeah.
to do these things.
Keep it in the guardrails.
Were we going to
Now,
talk about we talked about what we might say to somebody who could be concerned that they may be starting to get this accumulation or have this
Yeah.
condition and they're not sure. could we talk about some warning signs about, just to be looking out for if you are overweight and you're not taking care of yourself, you're sedentary, maybe you don't even go and get your blood work. Let's talk about the signs that you need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, there's a few really important ones. And remember what we said earlier, and that is symptoms are going to come on gradually. So it's not like, bam, you have a cold or you broke your arm. It's a very gradual cumulative process. So some symptoms to pay attention to if you're not looking at your blood numbers, and we really encourage you to do so, would be like excess thirst. If you experience frequent urination, that's listed. If you're feeling tired or weak, that's important to pay attention to. Recurring infections is actually a sign that you've got
Yeah.
the increased inflammation, your immune system's wearing out.
Right.
Anything from headaches, nausea, dizziness, and restlessness are also kind of telltale signs that you need to look into it
Yep.
further.
Yep. Brain fog, frequent
Absolutely.
hunger also
Yeah.
be one.
And then I've got two awesome extra important things that we need to talk about.
Does this have to do with the exercise?
Yeah, one
I
of them
knew
is.
it. I
I
knew it.
know. It's kind of cool stuff. So I can't help
No.
myself.
No, so it kind of does go into it because you just mentioned some of the things that we can do if you are feeling overwhelmed with the things to do, and just to cover that. I mean, basically, having a healthy, balanced diet, and if that's a struggle for you, then just start simple. Start adding vegetables into your diet and whole grains because those are going to help process sugars slowly into your body rather than the simple sugars that go straight to your blood.
Yeah,
And then, like you said, the 15 minutes of moderate exercise weekly, you can break that up into walking, swimming, those kind of things. Exercise, move your body, move your body. And people don't understand that. A lot of people don't realize that that is really a big deal. Yes, nutrition is, but getting regular exercise and moving your body does impact. And I know you're going to get into another part of that. Staying hydrated, getting plenty of water to drink, we that is a big one, and like you said, managing your stress. So I'm excited for this next part because I know you're going to talk about the exercise piece, and I get real excited about this, so let's go. And I'm
well, yeah, it's what you preach and train and what your people are good at. And it's something that not very many people in America are doing. So good for your audience. And that is structured resistance training.
Yay,
So
structured strength training.
let's talk about why. Like that sounds great. Do that. But why is that important? So increasing your muscles, stronger muscles can store more glucose. So
Right.
it's really simple.
Yeah, building
Yeah.
muscles so that it can store more glucose
Yeah,
and help
exactly.
increase your metabolism, help increase the way that your body processes energy.
Exactly. So you're improving your muscles' response to insulin. So that's that insulin sensitivity that we want. So just like aerobic exercise, this is due to you're increasing your body's ability to use glucose. It also increases your heart rate and your breathing and promotes better blood flow. But in addition to aerobic, what's nice about, resistance training is it reduces your body fat to muscle ratio. So that's what we're trying to go for with lifting weights. So
Yes,
with
body
more muscle
composition.
mass, yeah, it's
Yeah.
humongous. So with more muscle mass, the body reduces its demands on insulin to store energy in the fat cells. So that's it. So it's muscle hypertrophy. We know that word. It just means muscle growth
Yeah.
is going to lead to insulin sensitivity. So it's kind
Yeah.
of diabetes insurance.
Right. And this is what we preach all day long, how you can actually impact in a positive way your metabolism by increasing your muscle mass.
Yeah.
Um so I want to back up to talking about blood glucose levels, levels in our blood. And that sugar level, just making it a simple way to talk about it, is going to spike and it is going to drop. What we're looking for throughout our day is to have a steady level of glucose in our body throughout the day. We want to do our best to keep things steady. So now this is just talking about things just kind of like, let's just break it down, make it simple in everyday language. And the goal really is to maintain that glucose level in our blood throughout the day. And ways that we can do that is making sure that we get plenty of protein in our diet. And I know people say all the time, "Well, I'm getting plenty of protein. I eat chicken and I eat fish and meat and but you need to make sure you're getting optimal amounts of protein. That's the issue. It's not that people aren't eating protein, it's that they're not getting enough protein. So you don't know, I'm going to throw this in here. You don't know how much protein you're getting unless you're tracking it. If you've never tracked protein, how do you even know how many grams of protein you're getting a day? So the reason this is important in managing your blood glucose level, everyone, in case you don't know, is because of the three macronutrients, protein has the highest thermic effect. And that basically means your body has to work the hardest to break it down. So it takes longer for your body to break down the protein that you eat, which helps to maintain your glucose level and keeping it steady. So what happens is, a very common scenario, first thing in the morning, somebody might decide, I'm going to eat a healthy breakfast. I'm going to have this bowl of oatmeal. I'm going to throw some berries on here and I'm going to have a banana. And they're like, yeah, that's a healthy breakfast. Wow. While those foods are definitely healthy and great for your body, you're missing a very important, crucial piece in that meal, and that's protein. So, what you have done here with this meal is you've just spiked your glucose level, because what all that is carbohydrates, your oatmeal, your fruit, your banana, those are carbohydrates. And so, your body is going to go immediately into breaking that down. Carbohydrates get broken down into sugars and it goes into your blood. And so, that's how you get this spike in blood glucose. And now you got that spike. And then won't be long before you're hungry again. And then all of a sudden you have a drop. And I'm just throwing this in here because it's just simple, I know, but we all need to keep on reminding ourselves how important it is to have optimal amounts of protein in all of our meals so that we can keep this steady state of glucose throughout the day. I just hijacked the mic from you, dude.
No, I love that. And just to build on what you said, when you started talking about it, it got me excited. So I went and looked on Instagram.
I'm getting excited.
I know. There's somebody I follow on Instagram. I think you do too. Maybe it's the Glucose Goddess.
No,
and she's amazing, and you should follow her.
I don't follow many people.
She publishes papers, and one of them is that consuming carbohydrates after your meat or vegetables lowers your glucose and insulin spikes. So the timing of how you eat your food matters.
Yeah. And so one simple thing you can do is to be eating your protein first. If you want to get all technical about it, make sure you eat your protein first. And it's also going to help you curb your cravings, keep you satisfied, all these, and make sure that you get your protein. So you're not getting filled up on the other macros, and then you're not hungry for your protein. And now you're not getting your protein in. But that leads me to the thing that I was going to talk about was these glucose monitors. You've probably seen it too. It's kind of been a thing like that on social media, that people are getting these things, they're ordering them online, they're wearing a glucose monitor, and they're freaking out because, oh my gosh, my glucose went up. Well, it's going to go up after a meal. Like, that's just normal.
You're right. That's healthy.
That means you're getting some energy.
Right. Very good.
I know.
Point.
Just want to simplify that there is no shortcut. There's no, pill secret thing to do. It really always comes down to these simple things. The foods that we're eating, are they healthy? Are they nutritious? And, we're not about all or nothing. We do like to enjoy our fun foods too. But overall, if you want to manage your health on a preventative level and be healthy, strong, and fit, like, this is it. We're going to keep on saying it until the day we die. Is that exactly. It's just like, for strength train, get your protein, eat a balanced macro meal, exercise, get your walking in, get your 150 minutes of cardio every week, stay hydrated, manage your stress, get sleep, laugh, and have fun.
Exactly. Now, I have one more interesting thing I wanted to bring up that I think it's an opportunity for me, is why I'm excited. So okay. I heard this on an ATIA podcast this week, and these things are hard to go all the way through. They run like 2 hours, and they're very medical doctory.
Oh,
speaking.
Yeah. And that book, by the way, we need to let people know, like, if you're not into like really getting into the science behind stuff, this book isn't, you're not going to like reading that book. It's really deep.
It's an encyclopedia. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I cruised through the podcast and stopped on certain spots, and I got lucky and I found a gem. And so I wanted to share it.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Eating slowly and chewing thoroughly. actually has a big impact on your metabolism. And I wanted to kind of go through that real quick.
Nice.
And I
I
could be
like it.
accused of not doing this like I should. So this is an opportunity for me.
I'm sure you're not alone, Brett.
Yeah. So what it can do is it can actually act to reduce your inflammation. It can help you feel full faster. It can help with your digestion by completely chewing your food, obviously. But it gives your stomach time to signal to your brain that you're full, which takes about 20 minutes.
Absolutely. So true. Yep.
Yeah. And they threw in a statistic too that said fast eating is linked to an 11% increased risk of metabolic syndrome, which is pretty significant, I think.
Yeah, that is.
And then Dr. Ati even talked about his own experience. He said if he goes out and exercises, like rides his bicycle for an hour, if he waits an hour after exercise and he eats slowly, he won't overeat. But if he instead eats something like shortly after he exercises and pays no attention to the timing of his, chewing and eating slowly, he'll easily overeat the calories. So
yeah, I understand that.
yeah.
Totally get that. That's a good point. Yeah.
I think it is too.
I think it's a good point too. Like that's when I say like, don't let yourself get too hungry, because then you're going to eat so fast and you don't give your body time to signal that you've had enough.
Yeah.
And you're just going to think you're still hungry when you have given your body enough food, but you haven't given enough time to signal that you're not hungry anymore. Like you're not needing more food.
Yeah, exactly.
I've definitely dealt with that plenty of times when I've exercised and then gone to eat hungry, like really hungry.
Yeah.
So did we cover it all?
We did.
We didn't get I know we're probably scratching the surface, but we do want to encourage everybody to do these things, and it's definitely to get your strength training and, resistance training. I was going to pick on you. Remember we were talking about strength training?
Yeah.
And you sent y'all, I'm going to tell my listeners here. Brett's pressing 90-pound dumbbells, bench pressing 90-pound dumbbells. I'm like, dude, that is a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight. You can push way more if you do barbell.
I know. Plus, doing dumbbells is really hard because you have to kick them up from, to get them up, versus a barbell's already, in place for you to grab. So
right. You could be really pushing yourself even more if you did the barbell.
I know. So maybe I'll investigate that.
I'm waiting. Come on.
Okay.
I'm excited for you. I know you can push a lot of weight with a barbell.
Dumbbells are cooler, and they are.
Well, if you're feeling stuck, if you get stuck right there at the 90-pound dumbbells, that's really impressive, though. Like, very impressive.
For an old guy.
Yeah. If you get stuck there, it's time to move on to the barbell. So I'm going to be looking for that picture that you're going to send me in my DMs of you doing the barbell.
I appreciate it.
You get your spotter and push a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Help that glucose metabolism.
Yeah. No, but for real, yeah. Help build your muscle. This is for all of our ladies. If you're not on a structured strength training program, this is how you're going to build muscle. You're not going to build muscle over time just doing random workouts. I feel like that's like another repeated thing that we say, but it cannot be stated enough. You need to be on a structured strength training program where week after week you're doing same exercises, but you're actually increasing your loads, you're progressing, getting stronger, building muscle over time. And you can see that in the weights that you're lifting and the intensity that you're bringing to it and how you're getting stronger. So structured strength training program. And if you're a new listener or you've been listening and you've been hearing this and you're like, yeah, I know I need to do that. It's time, girl. Let's get going. Go in the show note. Chrissy, please link in the show notes our 30-day, free 30-day structured strength program. And you can use dumbbells and bands or gym. We've got that for free in the show notes. So if you haven't started a structured strength training program, get on it. No excuses. You can grab it in the show notes. As far as anything else, I don't know. What else, Brett?
We have to just do all this stuff, and we know what to do. We know what to do.
People know what to do. Why are they not doing it?
I know. We got to age like a boss, and we got to become harder to kill. That's
do.
It.
Yes. And one of the things that I just told our rock stars recently, and I've been saying this lately because it's true. Like, you are as young right now. You're as young as you are ever going to be. Let's take advantage of what you are able to do today. And it's not just your physical body, but your mind, right? All of it impacts all of it. It all affects everything. So if something we said today in this podcast has inspired you, motivated you, take action. Take some action today. Like, don't wait another day. You know what to do, right? But got to take action. And you don't have to have it all figured out before you take action, because action will create clarity. So get on it, girl. Brett, thank you so much once again for being on the podcast. We all
My pleasure.
appreciate you. Yeah, we all appreciate you. We're glad you're here. Thank you. I guess that's it. So everybody, self-care, self-love all day, every day, in all the ways. Rock on.